Welcome to Locally Sourced. I'm Armanda Famiglietti. Well, the election season is really heating up, and I can tell that from what's appearing in my mailbox. Every day I get more and more of these huge postcards, and it's annoying. But anyways, today I have a wonderful guest. He's been here before, and his name is Peter Harckham, and he's running for the 40th District State Senate seat. And welcome, Peter Harckham. I'm so glad to see you again.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Peter, let's get right into it. One of the, or I should say two of the pieces of mail that I got most recently show you in a very bad light. In fact, they make you look like you're some kind of, I don't know what. So let's see, here's one of them, and this one is about Chappaqua Station. And then there's this one that's really unflattering. And this says that you are a double dipper. And when I saw this, I was horrified. So please, Peter, can you clear up what I would call really sort of dirty political mailings?
Absolutely. And, you know, we expected nothing less from the State Republican Party. This is their playbook. Either they're being very dishonest or they're just really dumb. We released our tax returns yesterday. We called on Mr. Murphy to release his tax returns. He's been silent on that. Clearly shows that my jobs with the state were successive, not concurrent. And anybody who sees them, or even the public record, would know that.
Okay, so let me go back for a little bit. One of the charges was when you're a double dipper, that you have two jobs at the same time.
Which is illegal.
Neither one you appear.
Right.
Do those
you know, if
jobs.
I were making $311,000 as they allege, I would not be running for Senate right now. It's a disingenuous claim by a desperate candidate. He's trying to hide the fact that he's wrong on the issues, he's out of touch with the values of people in the Hudson Valley, and refuses to publicly debate the issues. He won't come to the News 12 debate, the LOHUD debate, the FiOS debate. He bagged on the League of Women Voters of Newcastle. We gave them 26 dates in October. He's not coming to the NAACP debate. He's not coming on your show because he knows he's wrong on the issues.
Yeah, okay. So that cleared up the double dipping. And you said it was illegal, so you couldn't have gotten away with that anyway.
No, it's preposterous. And again, here are my tax returns. We've released them to the press. Anybody is welcome to see them. Clearly show one salary, jobs were successive, not concurrent.
Okay. So what about the other charge? Now this is about Chappaqua Station, and if we can just sort of come in on that. You'll see a little boy, a little Caucasian boy, oh, so cute, standing on a railroad track because that's where his affordable housing is going to be built in Chappaqua. Now let's talk a little bit about that, because that's an interesting story. When you do actually check the facts, as it says on this poster, you see another story emerging about Chappaqua Station. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. They were saying that we on the county board had forced this in, and just knowing how our policies and procedures work, the county of Westchester's funding is the last funding into any housing development, and it only happens once all local approvals are in place. The County Board of Legislators has no say in siting, in zoning, in planning. All those approvals must be in place, including environmental approvals from DEP or DEC, as they allege here. So all the county is doing is providing supportive funding and has nothing to do with the siting or the planning or the local home rule issues.
Right. So I took the advice of Mr. Murphy's flyer and I checked the background that he put, and what I discovered was this is really a NIMBY fight of an affluent community, Chappaqua, resisting affordable housing and pulling out every kind of possible obstruction that they can to allow affordable housing in their little hamlet. So it's actually a good idea to kind of look that up, because it really kind of shows the fight, the people who are for affordable housing and allowing children from low means to be able to share in the wonderful school system that they have there. Right?
Well, it's about providing areas of opportunity And it's really disingenuous for Mr. Murphy, who has long been an opponent of the affordable housing settlement in Westchester, to be taking the high road on affordable housing.
Right. And then just yesterday, and I'm going to guess that between now and Election Day on November 6th, get out and vote, that there's going to be more of these kind of dirty politic mudslinging ads. He also accused you of somehow being in violation of the Hatch Act. That's a laughable claim. But tell us what that means. It's more
preposterous charges from a very desperate candidate. The Hatch
That's
Act.
How it looks.
The Hatch Act.
It looks desperate.
It does look desperate because it is desperate, and the Hatch Act applies to federal employees, and federal employees cannot campaign. And certainly do so on
federal employees, of which you are not,
or state employees who are paid through a federal grant, and none of that was the case. So again, Mr. Murphy opposes reproductive health care choice, and he's been blocking the Reproductive Health Act. He opposes common sense gun safety. We're not talking about eroding people's Second Amendment rights. We're talking about common sense gun safety, like the red flag bill, that would allow the police or someone else to petition a judge to temporarily remove the firearms from someone who's deemed to be a threat to themselves or other. He opposes that. He opposes the Child Victims Act, which allows people who are abused as children, it extends the statute of limitations so they can hold their accuser, their abuser,
right,
and the enablers accountable in a court of law. And we have serious issues that need to be addressed. The school districts in the 40th district are underfunded by over $76 million, over $4 million in Brewster, and several other school districts right here in Putnam County. So rather than putting out, in fact, this whole pile were taxpayer funded, coming out of his Senate office.
Right.
Which
these are the ones that I paid for as a taxpayer.
You as a taxpayer
in the 40th district
paid for those. Clearly, in the heat of election season, after the primary, he's sending campaign mail targeted, because this did not go to all his constituents, from his Senate office. So you, the taxpayers, are paying for his propaganda campaign, again, so he can hide from the issues and that he's wrong on the values of the Hudson Valley.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me more about the education. How are we owed that much money and our representatives aren't out there making sure we get it?
Well, the Brennan Center filed a lawsuit some years ago about foundation aid. And so based on
That's the New York State Education Foundation aid?
Yeah, and so based on those formulas, if you add up all the schools in the 40th district, it's over $76 million that we are owed. Why are we not getting that money? Because a lot of it is going to Long Island. When I was on the County Board of Legislators, we saw that with transportation aid. Beeline bus system was very comparable to the bus system in Nassau County, and yet they got $10 million in aid more than Westchester. Why? Because that's the power base of the New York State Senate Republicans. So if we want somebody who's going to be fighting for Westchester, for Putnam, and Dutchess, we need a Democratic majority so that we can bring some of that money back to the Hudson Valley that's going to Long Island. And we are supplementing, we the taxpayers, because of that shortfall, are supplementing schools in Long Island and upstate New York.
Wow. Okay, thanks for explaining that. So we have a map of the 40th district, which we're going to see in a minute here. So if you win, you may, because things are certainly moving in your direction. So there's the kitten jumping into the Hudson 40th district. You'll be representing a very diverse population.
Absolutely.
And, so tell us about the district.
It's a very unique district. Most of the population center is in Westchester, but that doesn't mean that Putnam and Dutchess are afterthoughts. They especially in economic development, have very serious needs. It is a diverse district, as you mentioned. We have urban centers in Peekskill and Mount Kisco and Brewster and Sleepy Hollow. We have suburban areas, and then you go right up to agricultural in places like North Salem, Northern Somers, and up into Dutchess County. So it's really kind of a neat multi-ethnic and through its very diverse economic interests, and that's why they have a lot of needs. Our downtown main streets in every hamlet are we've got empty storefronts because our family businesses can't compete with the big box store chains and the online retailers. So we need to focus like a laser on economic redevelopment. In many cases, that starts with infrastructure. You get north of Mount Kisco, and in many cases, sewers don't exist. So how can you have housing and restaurants and things that are anchor tenants that bring people walking, the pedestrian traffic we want for our stores? So a lot of it starts with infrastructure, and we move on from there.
So you've been knocking on a lot of doors.
Absolutely.
All over that map. What have you been hearing from the people you're contacting?
A lot of frustration with what's happening in Washington with Donald Trump and Kavanaugh. There's a lot of frustration there. There's frustration in Albany that the Senate Republicans have blocked a lot of good legislation for years that the Assembly has passed. Tremendous frustration about that. They've abdicated their right to lead. If you look at this last Senate term, they couldn't even pass renewals for red light cameras in school districts, let alone important bills like we were discussing before. So there's tremendous frustration with the corruption, with the gridlock. People want change, and they want a democratically run Senate. I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute because I just want to say that if our viewers want to hear you in person, meet you, talk to you, and your opponent, and other candidates who are running for election in the Putnam County area, you're going to be appearing at the League of Women Voters Putnam County Candidates Forum on Monday, October 22nd. We have one of their flyers up. You can see it's going to be at the Mahopac Library, which is one of the co-sponsors, and there's going to be quite a lineup of different local candidates who you want to hear from. So that's a plug for Monday, October 22nd, starting at 6:30. And that's going to be one of the few times, actually, that people are going to be able to hear you and your opponent speak at the same time, right? That's really the only public forum. As we mentioned before, he's shunning the NAACP debate in Peekskill, the League of Women Voters debate in Newcastle.
So he's just not going to show up. Is that what you've said?
Yeah, and News 12, FiOS, the Journal News, because he knows he's wrong on the issues, and that's why he's mailing all this trash to people's mailbox and making up outrageous charges, because he doesn't want to talk about the issues. He doesn't want to talk about where he stands on reproductive health, where he stands on common sense gun safety, the Child Victims Act, and he doesn't want to speak about why we're $76 million short in foundation aid for our schools.
That reminds me that in a lot of these flyers that I've gotten from Senator Murphy, he uses terminology like providing $247 million in funding to help New Yorkers struggle with addiction. He mandated prescribing doctors to take courses in prescription. He passed certain legislation. What do these words mean? Because it sounds like your opponent is out there just like a one-man guy doing all this great stuff.
A lot of the things that he likes to take credit for are things that happen in the budget naturally.
That's what I thought. It's just, that would happen with or without him being there.
Exactly. The phosphorus funding that he got for 2 Putnam County lakes, I think he said $300,000. When I was in the county legislature, I got $30 million for Northeast Westchester for phosphorus reduction. $20 million of that was for infrastructure for sewers, and another $10 million was for the phosphorus catchment centers that we need to construct to remove phosphorus from stormwater runoff.
So you said you did that. So does that mean you sponsored a bill that did
that?
Is
that we needed to sponsor legislation to do.
And that's different from some of the claims and that I did this and I did that that were going to happen anyways.
They're naturally in the budget, so the big checks that he shows up with are things that come out of the budget in the normal course. Now, if Mr. Murphy were serious about substance abuse, he would allow debate on health care reform. And the New York Senate Republicans have blocked any kind of debate in the committee on health care reform. The Assembly has passed a slew of bills, whether it's universal health care for every New Yorker, or simple things like protecting rates and pre-existing conditions, which the Republicans in Washington are going after. So if we want to really seriously talk about mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, then we really need to have a serious discussion about health care reform, which Mr. Murphy is blocking.
That's interesting because that's one of the main things that he touts as what he's done. He's leading in helping people through the opioid crisis. So you're
we
maybe
need,
not so much.
We need to do much better when it comes to substance abuse. Many rehab treatment centers don't take certain insurance. I know people whose loved ones have had to spend $50,000 out of pocket to get into treatment. So there's a lot more that we need to do. We need more community mental health centers. We need more community outreach for substance abuse treatment. And we need to have a holistic discussion about how we approach substance abuse as a medical community, as a society, not these little one-offs that Mr. Murphy likes to tout.
Right, and just to mention that Mr. Murphy is on the Senate Health Committee, so that's the perfect place to stop legislation that's been approved by Albany for just exactly what you're saying.
The
so
Assembly
not only is he just sort of on the sidelines not doing anything, he's actively stopping the conversation about affordable health care and how that impacts the opioid crisis.
Exactly, and at least have the courage to state your views and debate the issue and take it to a vote. If you want to vote against something, fine, have the courage of your convictions. But bring it up in committee. Take it to the floor for a vote. He has not done that. The Senate Republicans have not done that. And regardless of where people are on the issues, they deserve to know that their legislators are debating the serious issues of the time, and Mr. Murphy's not doing that.
He's missing in action, kind of just the way
on
he's not showing up for debates
issues.
and forums. And speaking of not showing up, I invited him to come on the show. I reached out to him through his website. There's a contact us section, and I very clearly asked him if he was available to come on the show and let me know what his available dates were. And I got a response back that was very boilerplate. It just said, thanks for contacting me. I'm glad you're a constituent. Didn't ever actually directly respond to my invitation, to my question, which made me think, okay, this is one of those emails that say, we saw that you sent me an email, but we didn't bother to read it.
And what if you had a much more serious issue that you needed his office to adjudicate? We talk about a lot of the ideological things and the problems and the challenges in the municipalities. Half of the job is constituent service. And you have to have a top-notch team of people who are going to be helping people navigate, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, social services. There are so many things that constituents rightfully have questions about, and you need a staff fully focused on that instead of having 4 photographers with you anytime you show up at a senior center. You need to have trained
and
people.
A very large check.
Yeah, you need to have people in your office focused on servicing the constituents and getting back to them in a responsive way. It's one thing to say, we got your email, we will call you within 24 hours. That was always my policy as a legislator.
Yeah, there was no line like that in the email.
Right,
I
was
got.
that it came.
And I included my phone number, my email, everything.
It's realistic that you can't get to everybody the same day, but within a 24-hour period, someone from the office should call and say, thanks for calling. What can we do for you? We may not be able to solve it today, but we're on the case.
So if you're elected, you're saying that's going to be your policy in terms of your constituents.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we don't have that much time left, so I want to get into some nitty-gritty. So when you're elected and you're serving in the Senate, what are some of the first things you're going to want to tackle?
Well, as we mentioned early on, the Reproductive Health Act, we need to codify Roe v. Wade in state law. We need to pass common sense gun safety to keep our kids and our schools and our public spaces safe, the child victims law. And then we need to get to work on the foundation aid formulas for education, because that's killing our taxpayers. And as we mentioned before, that $76 million shortfall is being made up for with property taxes, and therefore our property taxpayers are supplementing the educational funding of Long Island and upstate New York.
Yeah, that is horrible. And I haven't heard too much conversation from Mr. Murphy about that particular issue.
And property taxes, if you look at any issue in any polling in any election in this area, property taxes are always number one. And then if you add in the loss of state and local tax deductions from the federal tax bill, we just saw that deficit was going to be $1 trillion next year, with the overwhelming majority of that going to the richest 1%. And now Hudson Valley homeowners are picking up the tab.
Right, and I think I heard that some of the values of homes in Westchester are going down, because how can you sell a house with an annual price tag of over maybe $20,000 in property taxes every year?
And sales have been declining until people see how this shakes out. So this really was a direct attack on New York, an economic attack. And who do you want defending New York? Do you want a Democratic Senate that's willing to stand up and fight back against Donald Trump, or do you want Terrence Murphy, who said, seeing Donald Trump nominated was a great day for him? So it's really a different value set that we bring to this race, and a different focus, a real focus on the taxpayers of this district and what their needs are.
Yeah. I also noticed that I think it was one of the leaders, McConnell maybe, at the federal level, was saying, now we have such a huge such a huge deficit that we're going to have to start cutting Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
That's been the Republican playbook for decades.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants cuts to those. Isn't that a losing proposition?
Those are key programs that keep our seniors able to have a quality of life, so that we don't have poor houses, the way they did in Victorian England. Social Security and Medicare were promises that our government made to our seniors, and they've paid into that. This is not some freebie, not some giveaway. Seniors have worked hard all their lives to build our communities, to pay into Medicare, to pay into Social Security, and they deserve elected officials who are going to be defending those programs.
Right. I noticed on the news that when McConnell would say something like this, they would show him speaking months ago when they first passed that wonderful affordable whatever it was tax act. That he said it was going to pay for itself, and that the deficit would be erased within just a few years. What happened to that?
It's the nonsense that they've been spewing for years, going back to Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, it's very hard to trust.
It is, and so you need elected officials who are going to level with you. Obviously, we want to keep taxes low. I have a very good record on taxes from when I was on the county board. So we need to keep property taxes low, and the way that we do that is by bringing in more foundation aid, because education is about 60% of people's property tax bills. And if you are going to raise taxes on somebody, do it on the people making over $5 million a year who got the benefits of the national tax cut.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. What about, there are different committees in the state senate and different avenues for people to work with other people. Where would you like to see yourself? Do you get a chance to pick the committee you'd be on, or? Well,
you ask leadership, and you say these are the ones that are important in my district. Obviously, the Environment Committee is critical in terms of the watershed issues that we deal with, the clean water issues, clean energy, the gas line infrastructure that's going through Westchester and Putnam. Transportation Committee is inordinately expensive. We have so many state roads, not just the big major ones that we see, but a lot of the smaller ones in our communities that desperately need work. So those are two of the key committees that we need to we need to have a voice on, and a strong voice on.
Okay, so we just have a few minutes left, and I want to be sure that you said everything you needed to say. One of the things that you did was you brought a large folder with your tax returns in it. Why is that an issue? Why is revealing your tax returns an issue?
It's transparency. It's good government. Every candidate should release their tax returns. We called on Mr. Murphy to release his. There's been silence. When elected, I'll release my tax returns every year to show that I have zero conflicts of interest. And the other is this refutes his preposterous claims about having two jobs at once in the state government. It's for the period of 2015 to 17. Clearly shows with the W-2s that those were successive jobs, not concurrent. But more importantly, the tax returns should be released by every candidate, and I'm happy to do that.
Well, when you think about the leadership in his party, the president has refused to reveal his tax returns.
Exactly.
It's the longest audit in the history of the IRS, I think, that's going on. Then maybe the other Republican candidates as well just want to follow suit from their leader. I'm just offering that as a possibility. Have we heard from Senator Murphy at all about why he is not released?
The silence has been deafening. I'm sure he has reason to be concerned. If you recall, he left 6 partnerships off his financial disclosure some years ago when he had unpaid property taxes, tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid property taxes on the bar that he owned. So what are the outside business interests? You know, do they coincide with your role as a legislator and as an elected representative? And the people have a right to know.
Okay, so we really are out of time now. If you want to just say one more thing, like come out and vote for me on November 6th or whatever else.
Turnout is incredibly important, and if you're tired of the gridlock, you're tired of the corruption, please vote on November 6th.
Okay, thanks so much, Peter.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Good guy.
To see you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to thank, of course, all of the volunteer crew that come in and for people who watch. Thanks.